Alright, so today we are going to design this slip together Christmas tree out of some 12 gauge mild steel. It'll make a neat little Christmas gift. So the first thing we're going to do in Design2Cut or FlashCut is go to a new document, create a new document. Next thing we need to do is go out to the old Google interweb, and all I did was search Christmas tree silhouette on Google Images. I clicked the tools button and I changed it to black and white and clip art. Now you could choose any of these trees really, but I chose this one here because of its low points out here that the Christmas tree will sit on, and then its higher middle. What you don't want is a tree curved like this one here that would only sit on the very center. It would be kind of tippy. So this one I see is free Christmas tree silhouette. So if I click on it, okay, so I like this Christmas tree, so I'm just going to click on it and visit the website. And when I come to the website, you'll see the image here, and I can go ahead and download this image for free. So when I click on download, it pops up and it puts it in my downloads folder. So I like to go ahead and show in folder. I'm going to take that, move that over to my pictures folder. I want you guys to move it over to your P drive for school so that you have the file and have it there. So now we can go ahead and come up to our import tool, import a silhouette, browse as we usually do, go to the location where you saved your file. Here's my tree. I'm going to double click on it and open it up. And as you can see, it's going to bring the image in. That image is roughly 10.5 by 10.5. We're going to do a little resizing to it here after we're done doing just a little bit of editing. So I'm pretty happy with that. If I zoom in, that looks like a pretty good trace. So I'm just going to go ahead and check it in. Now I want to delete out this entire base down here. And as you see, when I hover over it, it highlights the entire thing. When you bring in an image, it brings it in as a grouped image. So if I click on it, and I can either come up here and click the ungroup tool or hit the U key on my keyboard and ungroup it, and then you will see I'm able to select each of the individual entities. I'm going to click and drag a box around this bottom part, being careful not to grab any of the rest of the tree, and I'm going to delete that section out. Then I'm going to zoom in here, and you can see where it starts coming up about right here, and right after this point it starts going down. So I'm going to zoom in and grab that section of line and delete it. Grab a couple sections of line here, and then I'm going to click and drag a box around, delete a little bit more, and delete this. I'll come over here, do the same thing over here, delete that piece, delete that line, and then the rest of this can go away. Okay, now to close my object back in, I'm going to come to the line tool. I have turned off a bunch of my snaps, so all I have turned on right now is midpoint and perpendicular. And you can turn those off by clicking on them, and if they're blue, they're turned on. And when you turn them off, so if you turn them all off except for midpoint and perpendicular, when you come down here and endpoint, we're going to need endpoint. So when we come down here with endpoint, you'll see it gives me that snap to grab the endpoint. Click. I'm going to come over and I'm going to click there. And if I zoom out, you'll see I got a pretty good looking tree there. Okay, I'm going to hit escape to get out of my line tool. I'll click and drag a box around this entire object. Now if I look at my tree, you can see my tree is 7.5 wide by 8.5 tall. I'm going to go ahead and just modify that a little bit. We're going to make this 7 wide, and we're going to go to 8 inches tall and see how we like that. It looks about right to me. Alright, so the next thing we want to do here is grab a line. We're going to draw a line that goes right down the center of this. So we're going to zoom in, find something here about the center, and then what we're going to do is we're actually going to zoom back out, and we're going to come over here into our window. You can see our angle when we go downward is negative. So we're going to grab our angle and go -90, and hit enter. And then we're going to make our line. We made this 8 inches tall, so we're going to make our line 8.5 inches long. And that should stick beyond. And the last thing we're going to do is make this line for construction. So we check that for construction, we say OK, and then we're going to hit cancel so we get out of the line tool. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come over and grab the line tool. We're going to zoom in here and grab somewhere right around the point. And then we're going to come down, zoom out. We're going to move our mouse down somewhere in this neighborhood. And if you notice, our angle over here on the right is going negative. So we're just going to come over here and type in -90 as our angle. Tab to move down. We're going to make this line 8.5 inches long. And then the last thing we're going to do before we check it in is make this line for construction. So it won't be a cut line on our project. We're going to say OK. And then we're going to hit cancel to get out of the line tool. Cancel to get out again. We're going to hold down the Alt key and select the entire, so we select the entire profile of our tree. So if we hold down the Alt key, it will select that profile. And then we're going to hit the G key to group it. And then we're going to click on this line. We're going to use the offset tool. And what we want to do is offset it. And you'll see mine's already set to offset bidirectional. And that is this check mark right here. If you check it, it will offset it both directions. If you uncheck it, it will offset it one direction. And if you want to offset it the other way, you just check the reversed button. Okay, so we're going to check bidirectional. And I've done a little bit of testing on our table, and with fine cut consumables and 12 gauge, if we cut a 0.125 slot, it slides together pretty good. We're offsetting it both directions, so we want to offset it by half of that, which is 1/16 of an inch, or 0.0625. So we have our offset, say OK, and then we'll hit cancel. We'll click away to get rid of that. Now, the last thing we got to do before we can copy this So the last thing we have to do here is go back to the line tool, and we want to come in somewhere about the middle. It really does not matter if it's exactly in the middle or not. We're going to come somewhere in about the middle of the tree, and we're going to draw a horizontal line across and click and say OK to create that line. Okay. Now with all of this, we need to highlight everything, and we're going to hit Control C to copy, and Control V to paste, and then that will allow us to paste another version of our tree, and we're going to click and say OK. That is the last piece of our tree here. Now, because we have two, we have the one half and the other half. We're going to use the trim tool, and we're going to zoom in here, and we're going to take, on this side, we're going to take the top half of the slot off. So we're going to trim off the upper section and the lower section down here, and you'll notice that trims it down to this line. Take off those pieces. Then we're going to zoom out and come down here to the bottom and trim the bottom, but you notice it won't trim the tree outline. That is because the tree outline is grouped. So we do have to, again, click on the tree outline, hit the U key on our keyboard, click on it, U to ungroup. Now, and then it wants us to right click to confirm. Then we can click on the trim tool, and now it will trim out these sections. Trim these lines off like so. Click and drag a box around it, G for group, and that now acts as one entity over here. Okay, we're going to come over here. This one, we need to trim the bottom out. So we're going to trim the bottom section of the line up to here, trim these outside edges, come up, we'll trim the top, and then again, you'd hit escape to get out of the trim tool, click on our outline, U for ungroup, Then we go back to the trim tool, and we can trim out all these little sections of line, and you have to be careful and make sure you get all the little sections of line. You can see a couple hanging out up there. We want to make sure we get rid of all of them. And you can see now how we have the two halves of our tree that will slide together. Hit escape to get out of the trim tool. Now we need to make our topper. Our topper, we're going to start with a circle, and we're just going to click out here to draw a random circle. We're going to click, we're going to come over here, and we're going to make that circle, we're going to go 3 inches in diameter. Okay, and that looks about right to be the right size. We're going to check it in. So we're going to grab our circle, hit the offset tool. This time we do not want it to be bidirectional, so we're going to turn off bidirectional. And we want to offset it in 0.25 inches. And we want it inward, so if it was going outward, we would just check or uncheck the reverse button. We want it to go inward. So okay, and that forms the outer ring of our monogram top. Now we need to grab the text tool. You're going to pick your letter that you want, capital letter. I'm going to do a capital L for my last name. And then we want to click to establish it, and then I like to click on it again and start going down through my options. And if I click on one and then start hitting the down arrow, I can see all the different fonts. So I find something I like. Remember your concepts for plasma cutting. Nothing too thin, nothing too fancy, nothing too difficult to read. I like something like that for me. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to drag this guy out to make it a little bit bigger. Move it over inside my circle. And I need my letter L to overlap my circle a little bit. Drag it out just a little bit bigger. I like that. That's got a good overlap. So once you're happy with your font and your letter and your size, then we'll go ahead and explode the letter so that we can use it. So we'll click on the explode tool. We've already got our letter highlighted. Click OK, and it will turn our letter into a monogram. Now, probably the easiest thing to do here is just go to the trim tool and start trimming out these sections. Zoom in, make sure you don't miss any pieces here. Mine's pretty easy because it's a square letter. Make sure you don't have any leftover lines or anything. Zoom in on your corners. Make sure you don't have any lines overrunning those corners. And there you have your full letter. Okay, so now we just want to click and drag a box around our entire image. Hit the letter G to group it. We're going to zoom out and move down so we can see our Christmas tree. We're going to start moving this in. That center white dot there I'm going to use to kind of line up on my center line on my tree. I'm going to drag it down to get a nice good bite across the top of my tree. Once I'm there, I'm going to click and drag a box around my tree. And we should be able to just hit the weld key, and the weld button should weld that letter monogram to the top of your tree. Alright, and one more small detail we have to do to it. We're going to go ahead and group these first of all. So we're going to click and drag a box around it, letter G for group, and group this one as well. Now, if we click and drag on the outline, it will leave the outline for us to see. We're going to bring this guy and set it down on the red line, and I'm going to show you why here. We drag this over top. When we interlock these two halves of the tree together, you can see where the other half of the tree would stick up over our monogram letter. So we're going to bring this back over here so that we can fix it. We're going to set it right on the red line as well. We're going to zoom in, grab a line, make it for construction. We're going to try to make that right about even with where the bottom of the circle would be. And we're going to come in here and just get that point and click and draw a construction line across and say OK. Then we're going to uncheck for construction. We're going to draw a short line here that's not for construction. Hit escape to get out of that tool. We'll delete our construction line, and now we can zoom in and deal just with this top of the tree. We want to chop off these points from that point on up. Remember, we cannot trim grouped entities, so we're going to take this profile, click on it, ungroup it with the U key, click on our trim tool. We'll start trimming off our sections of line that we don't need, and then we'll come in and we'll try to grab whatever sections of line are right there above to split that away. Once we have it separated from the top of the tree, make sure you don't leave any little sections of line hang up here off the edge of the tree. Then we'll hit the escape key, drag a box around one side and delete it, drag a box around the other side and delete it. And then I like to go ahead and hold my Alt key, click on my profile, and hit the G key again to make sure that my profiles act as one complete entity. Okay, so now we're ready to take this over to the cam side of things and go ahead and prepare lead ins and lead outs. We'll click the button to head over to the cam side, and then we'll zoom in here. We'll check our lead ins just like we have before. We'll click on them. We'll drag them into more space and make sure that they've got plenty of room to clear everything. And we'll just move them around as we need to, making sure that as we shrink some of these small ones that we do come over and check the arc radius and make sure we're not getting much under 100 thousandths of an inch or it won't cut well. We've got one. I don't care for where this one's at, so I'm going to drag it down, put it on the outside of the tree here, and we should be good to go there. Hit cancel. I am going to come up here and change my piece size because I notice my piece is set to something pretty narrow. So I'm just going to make my piece 48 by 48. For us, it's non-critical. We're going to nest these kind of on one another. So in order to get this to move down into the corner, we're going to come up, grab the true shape nesting. We're going to make sure our space between the parts here is a 1/4 inch and the space on the sheet is a 1/4 inch. We're just going to give it 90-degree rotation steps. We're going to click Start Nesting. And you can see since I had along the X, it's going to stack it pretty nicely going vertical here. If I were to change this and go along the Y and click Start Nesting, it's going to turn it and put it this way. And those are just the best nestings that it can come up with for it. Either one is fine, really doesn't matter. The key is that we're getting it down here on 0, 0, and we're making space for it. So once we're happy with those settings, we click OK to check it in. And we go ahead and click Export G-Code, save our G-Code to our flash drive, and then don't forget to file save your CAD CAM file as well to your P drive, so that if you have any issues, we can come back and edit the file. And this is ready to go cut with 45 amp fine cut consumables on our design or on our FlashCut plasma table.